When you record a macro, Excel converts your commands into Visual Basic Application Code, or VBA, that it can use and stores it. So when I want to go ahead and edit a macro because maybe I didn't want the color here to be purple, or I didn't want to underline, I didn't want the size to be that type of size, just come up here, click on the View tab, go to the Macros group, click on Macros, select your macro, and click on Edit or Step Into. It doesn't matter because it pulls up the same window. And when it pulls it up, everything that you see in green is a comment, and it begins with an apostrophe, so it's not part of the code. It's just basically commenting on what the code is down below, like the name of the macro, the comment of the macro, and then the keyboard shortcut Control+A. And then down below, as far as editing the code to get what you want, some things are pretty simplistic. Like, for example, it's going to go to cell A1. If I want to have it go to another range when I run my macro, I can say go to, how about, C1. So that's pretty simplistic as far as updating the code here, and maybe other simplistic things like the font type instead of Arial, how about Times New Roman. And then the size, let's really do something outlandish, 100. Now when it comes to everything else, I don't know much about VBAs, so if I ran into trouble, I would simply re-record the macro. But for these simple fixes that are pretty easy to understand, when you're done, come up here and click on the File menu, go down to Close and Return to Microsoft Excel, and then let's go ahead and run our macro. You can come up here on the View tab, go to the Macros group, click on the Macro button, and then select the macro that you want to run, click Run. Ooh, hey, look at that. It went right to cell C1, and it didn't update cell A1. And then in C1, let's come up here and click on the Home tab. It changed it from, well, what was in cell A1, Arial, size 24, to Times New Roman, 100. So when all else fails and you want to change something that doesn't make sense to you as far as the VBA code goes, delete the macro and re-record. Or re-record and just save the macro with the same name to overwrite it. If you're referencing other cells during a macro recording, like you're making quarter one bold, then the one below that italics, you need to know that there's a difference between absolute versus relative referencing. So if I stop the recording there, and I come over and I run the macro, it's going to make that bold, but instead of making the cell below that italics, it's going to go back to the last cell that I had recorded. That's what's called absolute referencing. In other words, when you're moving from cell to cell to cell during a recording, the last cell selected is the cell that the macro is always going to go to, no matter whatever cell you select when you run the macro later. And that's the default. And that's not going to help me out, but before I show you relative referencing, let's go ahead and do a recording with the default absolute. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that cell, select it, and then to record, let's come up here, click on the View tab, go to the Macros group, click on the drop-down arrow and say Record, and then we'll call this Absolute, and we'll do Control-M, click OK. We'll make that bold. Let's come up here on the Home tab, select Bold, and then go down to the cell below it, make it italics, and then stop it. Then we can go to the next quarter and run the macro by coming back up here, clicking on the View tab. I mean, you can do the shortcut Control-M, but we can do it here as well to refamiliarize you with the other ways that you can run macros. Click on the Macro button, select the macro, click Run. It makes that bold, but it goes back to the last cell always. Because, again, by default, when you record a macro, it's going to be an absolute reference. Now, if you want it relative in that, if I go ahead and make that bold, and then come down here, make it italics, and then come down here, make it italics, and then run that in any part of my worksheet relative to what I had selected up here. So if I had another database down here and I ran the macro as a relative reference, it would do the first two cells, and then how many cells in between that before it comes down here? 1, 2, 3, 4. It would do the first two cells, and then it would go 1, 2, 3, 4, do the last one here. To turn off the absolute referencing, or better yet to turn on relative, you need to have the Developer tab up. If you don't have it, then go ahead and right-click anywhere on the ribbon, go down to Customize ribbon, and down below you'll see Developer, check it, click OK, then click on it, and it's right there in the code group, Use Relative References. So let's come back up here, select quarter 3, and say use that, and then start recording, and that's it. With this turned on, it's going to look at the pattern here, or what I have relative, and not going by the last cell that I have selected and just, when I run it over here, going back to the last cell. So click on record. Let's do relatives. Click okie dokie. Let's come up here on the Home tab, make that bold, come down here and make it italics. And let's come down here for fun and make that red. Ooh, that's fun. Let's go ahead and click stop. Come over to quarter 4, and because it's relative, let's come back up here, click on the View tab, click on Macros and Relatives, click Run. Isn't that fun? And then by the way, when I'm done, let me click on the Developer tab. Since I don't use relative references a lot, I want to make sure that I deselect it so I don't go through a lot of work and go, oh, I meant to use absolute. Conditional formatting is just like it sounds. It's applying formatting to a range of cells that meet a certain condition or criteria that you set. So throughout the range here, if I want to find all those cells that are greater than 500, it's a heck of a lot easier if I can have a format applied to it, like red, because that's going to draw my eye right to it, and I can go, that was simple, there's something that's greater than 500. Then me going to each cell and going, let's see, 200, okay, that's less than 500. In any case, to go ahead and apply the conditional format to this range for anything that's greater than 500, first of all, go ahead and select your range that you want to apply it to. Then come up here on the Home tab to the Styles group, click on Conditional Formatting, and you get a lot of options. Let's go to the first one where we can highlight the cells that are greater than. You could do less than, but let's do greater than the number here. And the default number for me is 1162.5. So all those cells that are greater than 1162.5, which are these two, are going to be formatted with the light red fill with dark red text. But I don't want that number, so I can delete it and do one of two things. I can either select a cell that contains the value that I want it to be greater than, and you can see that greater than 200, it's got it all formatted here, or if there's not a cell that I want to use, I can just simply type in the number here like 500 and boom, there's all the cells that are greater than 500. Now you can change the formatting if you don't like it by clicking on the drop down arrow. We can choose green. Ooh, that's fancy. Or you can get a bit dangerous and do your own custom format. That's always fun. You got the color, the font style, border fill, even your own number format if you want to apply it. Let me click cancel. I'll go with green, click OK, click off, and there you go. Now if you want to tweak it, make changes to that conditional format for that range, like maybe increase the value from greater than 500 to 600, or even deleting the rule that's been applied to it. Just come up here and click on Conditional Formatting, go down to Manage, and notice that it says Show Formatting Rules for the current selection. Let me click and drag the window out of the way. What's my current selection? Does it contain a rule? Because if it does, it would be listed here. My current selection isn't the range that I applied the conditional formatting rule to, so it's not going to show it here. So let me move this back. I can do one of two things. I can either click on the drop down arrow and choose this worksheet and say, okay, show me all the rules that are applied in this worksheet, the least of which is the one that we just did, which is fine, but you can imagine if you had dozens or hundreds of these rules and you don't want to scroll through them to get to the one that you want to edit. The other option, let me click close, is to choose a cell within the range that has that conditional format applied to, or the rule, and come back up here, click on the drop down arrow, go to Manage, and the cell that we have selected includes this rule. So we can go ahead and select it, delete it, or click on Edit. Let me click Cancel. You can even double click on it, it brings up the same window. And then down here you can change it from greater than to, well, less than, or change the value, or even the format, or you can go to another rule altogether. Let me click and drag and move this up. So what's another rule? We've got the format all cells based on their values, not a value that I set for its criteria, but all the values where the lowest value is going to be in the color orange, and as we go up in value to the highest value is going to be in yellow. Now you can change this and say, fine, let's do an actual number where it has to be 200 as the minimum and the maximum's got to be 500 to go ahead and do this conditional format, and you can change the color. Let me go ahead and change the format style to a 3-color scale, because that way I can really identify with my midpoint with being an actual color, yellow, than going from, the 2-color scale from orange to a lighter shade of orange. So the bottom value is going to be the dark red, then the midpoint yellow, the high point green. Click OK, click OK. There you go. Bottom point, the darkest red, 100. As we go up in value, it goes to an orange color. Then higher in that is yellow, and then we go to the light shaded greens until we hit the highest value, which is the darker green, or the darkest green. Now you can have more than one rule applied to the same range. Let's just go ahead and select the range again, and then come back up here to conditional formatting. Let's do the top bottom, where we can set the top 10. And in fact, you can customize that if you want. Just click on top 10 and say that you just want to go down to the top 2. And the default format is again the light red fill, and there's the top 2 values within that range. Click OK, click off, cool. Let me go ahead and select it, or select a cell within the range, come back up here, conditional formatting, down to manage, and let's get rid of the top 2, delete it, so we're just dealing with the 1 rule. Double click on it to edit it, and so we had the format only cells that contain certain values or greater than a value. And then we changed it to have it based on all values, and then we did the top value, which by the way is right here, because what you select here when it comes to editing is going to take you back to the window here that allows you to tweak it. And so there's the top or bottom. You can change it from top to bottom and change the rank and then set the format. Then you have format only values that are above or below average. Format only unique or duplicates. So if you want the duplicates to stand out and identify those, go ahead and set the format. And then finally, use a formula to determine which cells to format. Now this one is just a bit tricky in that it deals with absolute references. And let me go over this very simplistically. Before I go ahead and type in a function or formula, I rather click cancel and close out and type it in the cell first to see if it's true, to test it, because if it's true, then the formatting is going to be applied. Once I see that it's true, I'll copy the formula and go back to the conditional formatting and paste it there. So let's go ahead and set up a formula, or let's do a function where it has to meet 2 conditions, not just one. So let's do equals and, there's the and function, checks whether all arguments are true, so I can have as many conditions or arguments. I'm just going to do 2. So with it selected, hit the tab key to pop open the function. First logical argument is going to be what? We're going to say B9 has to be greater than or equal to 200. That's the first argument, and then hit comma on the keyboard so we can go to the next argument and say that B9 has to be less than or equal to 600 and hit enter. Is it true? Yes. So it will apply that format to that cell. But keep in mind that if I select the range of cells to apply that condition to, that it's going to be looking at all of them and seeing whether it's greater than or equal to 200 or less than or equal to 600. Now, there's something that you need to keep in mind about this. In this example, I could be fine with it. In other words, let me go ahead and double click and select the formula, copy it, hit the escape key, select my range, come up here, conditional formatting to manage rules. There's the top 2. Guess we couldn't get rid of it here. Let's delete that one. Double click on it to open it back up and say use the formula, copy and paste it in there and set the format to be, let's do font, bold, click OK, and then click OK and click OK, and there you go. Now this seems pretty simplistic in that for me, when I look at it, and let me double click, when I look at the formula, are all the cells that are in bold, are they greater than or equal to 200? Well, yeah, 300 is. But at the same time, is it less than or equal to 600? So if it meets both of those conditions, then it's going to be in bold. That's fine, but if I'm looking at this where I don't want it to update, I always want it to be based upon a cell, because you need to know that whatever formula you enter, Excel is applying it to every single cell you have selected, and so the cell references will dynamically update just as if you copied and pasted the formula into every cell yourself, except conditional formatting does this in the background. So what's happening is that this is dynamic, because if it says to always look at cell B9 and say that B9, this value has to be greater than or equal to 200, then when it looks at this cell, if it doesn't update and it's still looking at B9, this isn't going to be in bold. As I said, this is dynamic, it's not absolute. So when it goes down to the next cell, it says, this is not B9, this is B10. So it's going to update and say, is B10 greater than or equal to 200? It's not looking at B9. That's fine if that's what you're looking for. But if you're like, dang it, this doesn't work because I want it to be constant and always looking at this cell, and so it doesn't update and copy and paste the formula, as it were, into each cell in the background when I apply the conditional format, then before you go ahead and take this function and copy it and paste it, you need to go ahead and set your absolute values. And if you don't know anything about absolute references, then you want to watch my training video on it so you have an idea what I'm talking about. Basically, it's adding your dollar signs here to say that, well, if I add a dollar sign in front of B, it means to not go outside of the B column. So it'll go ahead and go row by row, but once it hits the last row, it's not going to go into the next column, column C, and update it there. So let me keep it simple. Let me just add dollar signs to the first logical argument and also add dollar signs to the second logical argument, which is clicking in front of the B9 reference and hitting the F4 key on the keyboard, and it adds dollar signs for me, then hitting enter, and then going ahead and double clicking on it to select it and then copy it, hit escape, and then select my range here. And then coming back up, clicking on conditional format to manage rules, double click, and let's go ahead and paste it and click okie dokie, click okie dokie. And now you can see every cell is bold because when you look at this, double click, it's always going to be looking at B9, which it meets that condition. It's always going to be less than or equal to that. And so everything's going to be in bold because the absolute value says don't update it and move from one cell to the next. More so, let's get rid of the equal to 200, but it's got to be greater than, hit enter, it's going to be false. So if I double click and select the formula and copy it, hit enter, and of course select my range or cell within the range, click on conditional formatting to manage rules, double click, let's paste it, and click OK, click OK. Nothing is going to be applied to it because it's false. Again, double clicking on it, it's not updating the formula dynamically because we put a stop to the dollar signs. So keep that in mind. If you do want to have it before we added the dollar signs where you just selected the cell and say, okay, start at this point and it's got to be greater than or equal to this number, then it'll automatically move around and update it, the cell reference, from one cell to the next. This puts a stop to it so it focuses on one cell, or you can focus on one column, as you recall in the absolute mixed values training video, or you can go ahead and say just stay within the row and add the dollar sign there so it doesn't update that. As a side note, as I mentioned in an earlier training video, you can sort your range here of data. Like if I want to sort it alphabetically instead of by January being the first month, I can click anywhere within it and then come up here on the Home tab to the Editing group and click on Sort and Filter. Let's do a custom sort here because we don't have column headers or labels for the data range. So we can sort by, well, the total cells is going to be for that column. Column B is for the one that doesn't have a label there. And you can do it A to Z and click OK, and there it goes with the A's. Of course, that's not how we do it. We do it with January first, although that doesn't begin with the letter A. Let me go ahead and undo that. Basically, what I wanted to show you after I did the quick review here is you can sort by color. So when I have conditional formatting applied to a range of cells here, and I'm like, you know what? I want to be able to keep all the reds together and then the blues. Go ahead and select a cell within the range, and let's come back up here to Sort and Filter and do a custom sort, and let's sort column B. And within column B, I want to do it by cell color, and it gives me the colors that are available from the conditional formatting that I applied to it. And it's going to be blue or hot pink. So let's have hot pink on top, and then after it sorts it, so it's got all the pinks together and then the blues, let's add another level. So within the pinks, let's go ahead and I'm going to do the same column. Within the pinks, let's go from the smallest to the largest. And then also within the blue, it'll be from the smallest to the largest, or we can go largest to smallest and click okie dokie, and there you go. So it grouped all the pinks together, and it went from the largest within the group to the smallest, and then the blues largest to smallest. And then finally, you can actually filter by color. for the conditional format, just click anywhere within your mini database. Then come up here on the Home tab to the Editing group, click on Sort and Filter, and do Filter adds the two drop-down arrows for my mini database. Click on the drop-down arrow. We want to filter by color. Let's do hot pink. Cool. And then to go ahead and clear it, click on the drop-down arrow to clear filter from column B. And then, of course, to get rid of the drop-down arrows, back to the Home tab, Editing, click on Sort and Filter, and deselect Filter, and we're back to where we were before we applied the filter. Data validation is data that has to meet within a criteria that you set. So for example, with these 3 employees, I don't want them to expense anything more than $100 for entertainment in the quarter. So to set this up, select the range that you want to apply the data validation to, then come up here and click on the Data tab, go to the Data Tools group and click on Data Validation. By default, every cell in the spreadsheet is going to allow any value. We're going to change that and say decimal, and say it's got to be less than or equal to 100. And then when I click Okie dokie and I come over here and I type in 101, hit enter, it gives me an error, but it doesn't tell me why. So let me click Cancel and select the range again and tweak this just a little bit so we can give the person who enters in a number, if they get it wrong, what they're doing wrong. Come back up here, click on Data Validation. You can do one of two things. You can either do an input message or an error alert. The input message is before they enter in the data. When they have the cell selected, it'll give them a message, or after they enter it in, if it doesn't match up with what we have set here, that it has to be less than or equal to 100. So let's do both. The input message, by default, it's going to show if we type in anything down below. We can say the title is Enter in Expense, but must be $100 or less. Then we've got the error alert that we get a couple of choices here, or 3 to be exact. You can stop them if they don't enter it in exactly $100 or less, or as a warning in case if it's $1 over, then that's okay, and we'll pick up the extra buck. Or you can do it just as information only. Let's go ahead and do warning and type in the title. Okay, the title as was stated, and a happy face, because we want them to be happy when we can't cover anything over $100, or at least soften their hearts. And then down below, we won't reimburse anything over $100. Let's click Okie dokie, and there you go. Any cell, let me click off, that you select, it gives you the informational pop-up, looks like a sticky note, that says for the title, enter an expense, but must be $100 or less. If you ignore that, and you're like, oh, whatever, the boss knows me, I can enter in more, and you type in 101, hit enter. There's the title as was stated, happy face. We won't reimburse anything over 100. Now you can continue and say yes, and it will accept it, but hey, not only did we give you a message prior to entering it in, and then a warning, if you continue, you may not be reimbursed for that extra buck that you went over. Go ahead and select the range, and let's do data validation. Input message, maybe we don't want to use the input message. When you uncheck it, it won't be displayed, but it'll keep the text here in case if you want to recheck it and use it again later on. And in fact, let's go back to the settings and say now, and update it, the maximum is now 90. So let's click Okie dokie. Now even though this is over 90, obviously, it's not going to go retroactive and create a bunch of error messages here, it just leaves it alone. But according to what we have it set now, this is invalid data. And so once you set a range up and you're like, which ones are invalid? You can imagine if you have a huge database and you reset the data validation and you want to identify all those that are now invalid that used to be valid, then come up here, click on the drop-down arrow and choose to circle invalid data, and there you go. So then once you go ahead and fix it so it's $90 or less, the circle disappears. And of course, if I try to type in 101 again, we don't see, now I have to fix that because this is erroneous. It's supposed to be $90 or less now. In any case, you get the idea. Let's go ahead and say cancel, select the range, data validation, error alert, 90, and the input message, if we do use it, we need to update it, but I won't use that. Click Okie dokie, and we're now good. You can also control the length of text that's entered in to a cell, like let's say the destination. everybody who travels within the company is doing so within the United States. So instead of typing the full name of the state like Utah, let's have them abbreviate it. 2 letters only, UT for Utah, AZ for Arizona, and so on. So to set up the data validation for that cell, let's come up here, click on Data Validation, go to Settings, click on the drop-down arrow, do Text Length, and again we'll do something that's less than or equal to 2 characters, and then we want our message here. How about instead of an error message, we just do an input that says, then click Okie dokie, and there you go. Once you select it, please only enter in 2 letters, and if you try to type in the full name of the state, hit enter. They get the error, but they still get the pop-up, so that's fine. Let's click Cancel, because they can still see why it may not be accepting what they're trying to input with that pop-up, and then they can just enter in UT for Utah, hit enter, and cool. The last thing that I want to show you is that you can create a list, a drop-down list to choose from to control the data input into a cell, like the department. I don't want somebody to make up a department that we don't have or to misspell the name of a department. You can see I've got the list here. So what I can do is I can set the data validation for that cell. Again, data validation, settings, and say we want to create a list. Now I can do this one of 2 ways. I can either type in the list actually within the source box, and I'll do just the first 2, sales, comma, training, and then you can do comma, consulting, and so on, and click Okie dokie. And it starts off with a blank cell. Click on the drop down arrow and choose one. Let's do training. Or you can go ahead and update that data validation to change this from entering it in the source box to selecting the entire range, which coincidentally is the name of that range, department. You can see it up here with it selected is department, or you can just simply type it in. If I do equals department, and the reason why that might be good is because if your range is down on row 20,000, do you want to actually go down there and select it? I don't. So if you know the name of the range, or you can type in A17 colon A21, which means through. In any case, the name range or the default name that Excel has for it. Again, the A17 through A21, click Okie dokie, and there you go. Click on the drop down arrow. Fabulous, babes. You probably noticed by now that anytime you select a range of data, that when you hover your mouse over the lower right hand corner of your selection, you get this tag. When you move your mouse up and to the left, it disappears. Go back down again to it and it reappears. So new to Excel 2013 is this quick analysis tag that when you hover over it, you can see in the pop-up, it's called quick analysis, and it's used to analyze your data by using tools such as conditional formatting, charts, basic formulas, tables, and spark lines. Everything that we covered in earlier training videos that you can go ahead and click on to be able to bring up those categories here. You can do conditional formatting or go to charts to insert a chart, and it doesn't cover all the charts here. You can go to more charts, and if you want something a little bit more detailed than what's available, like for your basic formulas under the totals category, you can go ahead and click on the arrow to scroll over, and if it's not there, again, this is just a quick analysis. You want something that's more detailed, then you can come up here on the ribbon, click on the Formulas tab, and find your more complicated function or formula. Let's go back down here to Tables. You can insert a basic table or a pivot table, and then of course, last but not least, spark lines. Let's go back to Formatting for the conditional formatting and do an example here of the quick analysis tool. And you've got data bars that when you hover over it, you can see that you get a preview in your selection up here. Let me go back down. See? There we go. When I go ahead and click on it and click off, what it does is it finds the cell in the selection that contains the largest number and gives it the longest data bar, which is 2,225. And the cell that contains the smallest, well, gets the smallest data bar, and then of course everything else in between. Now if I want to go ahead and clear this, select the range, get your quick analysis tool, tag up, click on it, and come down here and click on Clear Format. And that's it. Now as far as editing your conditional formatting, like if you come back up here, you select one, you want data bars, and you click, and you also do a second conditional format like color scale. I've got 2 conditional formats, and if I'm like, I like them both, but I don't like the color scale's color. If you need to make any edits, you can't do it from the quick analysis tool here because it doesn't give you the option to edit. You have to come back up here on the ribbon, Home tab to Styles group, click on Conditional Formatting, and go down to Manage Your Rules. So to clear this, click on it, And you can come down here and click on Clear Format, which is nice because then I don't have to come up here on the Home tab. That is, if I'm not on the Home tab, I'd have to click it and then go to the Editing group, click on Clear, and then go down to Clear Formats. Just right here, click on it, Clear Formats, I'm done. If there comes a time that you want others to view your worksheet but without making changes to any of the cells within it, you can protect it by either coming up here and clicking on the Review tab, going to the Changes group, and there you go, clicking on Protect Sheet, or you can close out and right-click on the Worksheet tab down below, and you get the same option there, Protect Sheet. Let me click and drag this up. And by default, you can see that this is checked, Protect Worksheet and Contents of Locked Cells. So they have to be locked in order for them to be protected. How does that work? Let me close out. By default, every single cell throughout the entire workbook is locked. Now if it's locked, should I be able to make changes to it? Because if I come over here and change that from 80 to 90, it allows me to do it. Let's go ahead and take a look at that cell by right-clicking on it and going down to Format Cells and clicking on the Protection tab. You can see that it's locked. Down below it explains what's going on with locked cells. It says locking cells or hiding formulas because you can also hide formulas within a cell. It says it has no effect until you protect the worksheet, and it shows you where you can go to protect the worksheet. The Review tab, Changes group, Protect Sheet button. So having said that, let's click Cancel. With all the cells locked on the worksheet, if I right-click on the Worksheet tab to Protect Sheet, let me click and drag this up. We'll leave that checked, and you can type in a password to protect it. So in other words, for somebody to unprotect it, make changes to it, they have to have the password. Of course, you don't have to use a password. That way you get a lighter layer of protection, meaning that they really have to go out of their way to make changes to any of the cells when they have to come up here, because when I protect it, it'll change this from protect to unprotect. So they have to click unprotect to be able to make changes to it. In other words, they just don't accidentally come in here and hit a key by mistake, because if they do that when it's protected, it won't allow them to do that. So if they see that and they're like, hey, wait a second, I want to make changes to it, it wasn't a mistake, then they can come up here and unprotect it without a password. That way they don't have to disturb you on your vacation to get your password if that's the case. I'm going to go ahead and protect it and type in boo. And then down below it says you can allow users to select locked and unlocked cells, and you can also allow them to format cells once you protect the worksheet. I'm just going to allow them to select the locked and unlocked. Click OK. Go ahead and type in the password again to confirm it, hit enter, and now it's locked. So up here on the Review tab in the Changes group, we've gone from protect to unprotect. I'm not going to unprotect it because I want to show you that when I try to make changes in any one of these cells here, when I hit a key on the keyboard, it says the cell that you're trying to change is on a protected sheet. If you want to make changes, you have to unprotect it, and to do that, you got to go to the Review tab. You might need a password. It says you might because you can still protect it without using a password. Click OK, and to unprotect it, you can also right-click on the Worksheet tab and go to Unprotect. Type in the password boo, hit enter, and then we can go ahead and make changes to it. Now let's create a little scenario here. By default, when you protect a worksheet, because all the cells in the worksheet are locked, everything is locked down after you protect the worksheet, so nobody can make changes to any of the cells. However, if I want these employees to be able to make changes to their cells here for their totals for quarter one, then I want to go ahead and unlock those before I protect the worksheet. So I select the range, right-click on the range, go to Format, and on the Protection tab, uncheck Locked, click OK. So when I protect the worksheet, they'll be able to make changes there. And then any cell that I select in the Commissions column or the bonus, you can see up here in the Formula bar, it has the functions. So if I don't want them to see the functions when they select a cell, either locked or unlocked, and these are going to be locked, then I can select the range, right-click on the range, go to Format, and make them hidden, because maybe I don't want them to see how I calculate their commission or their bonus. So let's click OK. You can still select a cell and see it up here in the Formula bar because none of this takes effect until after you protect the worksheet. Click on Protect. We won't type in a password this time. Click Okie dokie, and there you go. Any cell you select here within the commission or bonus, you can't see anything here in the Formula bar. And then as far as changing any cells, if I come up here, even in a blank cell, and try to type something in there, I can't do it. But if I come to any cell within the range that I unlocked, like for Marge, and she types in something and hits enter, it accepts it. And then if they want to make changes to the worksheet and find out exactly what formulas or functions we're using here, they can try to unprotect it, and hopefully there's no password applied to it. So when they click on it, if you don't get a prompt to type in a password, then it automatically unprotects and goes back to protecting the worksheet. So then you can come in here and look at the commission and see it up there and go, hey, that's how they calculate our commission. I don't think that's fair. Or for whatever reason that you want to go ahead and hide your formulas, that's just one reason why I might want to hide my functions or formulas from others viewing it, so they don't find out how I come about with the numbers that I get there. They can question it and try to figure out how I got there, but I don't need to give them an easy way out by actually viewing the formula within the cell, knowing that I can hide it. Password protecting a cell or range of cells means that they're only editable with the password when the sheet has been protected. So if I assign a password to each one of these cells and give them to the corresponding employee, only that employee with that password has access to that cell to update their own Q1 total. Or I can assign one password to the entire range and give that password to the admin assistant, so these employees can still look at the worksheet here, but they just can't make changes to it. So if there's any discrepancies, they have to go through the admin assistant to be able to update it, because maybe there are some qualifiers in deciding what their Q1 total is, and the employees really don't know anything about it, and so instead of them just throwing in a number, they have to go through the admin assistant. So to assign a password to a cell or range of cells, just come up here, click on the Review tab, go to the Changes group, and it's right there. Allow users to edit ranges. You can see in the pop-up, you can set up password protection on ranges and choose people who can edit those ranges. Click on it and click New, and it's going to ask you 3 questions. Give us the title, and let's delete the generic range 1 and call it. I'm going to do one for each one of these cells here. Well, I'll do it for 2 because you'll get the idea after I do the first 2. So if we do it for Marge, and it refers to, let me delete that, it refers to the cell there, B6, and the password, we'll just type in Marge's first name. I know it's a bit generic, but you would do something different, I hope. Marge, hit enter, type it in to confirm it, hit enter, and there it is for Marge. Now let's do one for Mr. Humphreys. Click on New, and then it refers to delete that cell, and let's just do WC for the password, hit enter, WC, hit enter. You get the idea. Select a cell, select a range of cells, assign a password. When you're done, you can go ahead and click OK, and then this only applies after the worksheet has been protected. So I can go ahead and protect it now, or click OK, and then come down here and right-click on the Worksheet tab to Protect Sheet. Let me click and drag this up. Type in a password for the protected sheet. Boo, hit enter. Boo, hit enter. Now it's locked. You can see up here on the Review tab in the Changes group, it's gone from Protect to Unprotect. So if I want to make changes to any one of these cells, well, these are the only 2 cells that have a password tied to it. All the other cells are locked. If I double click on one cell, it says, hey, they're locked. Let's click OK. But on this one, when I double click, it says you can, but only if you have a password, which is lowercase Marge, hit enter, and I can go ahead and make changes. Fabulous. And then when I'm done, save it. Now, in this session, it'll still allow me to access it even after I save it. So I can come back in here and go, no, it's supposed to be this. Hit enter. And when I'm finished and I close out, when it's opened back up again, then it resets it. So I can only access this same cell again if I have the password. So let's go ahead and save, close out, come down here on the taskbar to right-click on the program icon to get the jump list. And there's the most recent document I was just in up at the top, Password Protect Cells. Click on it. And then if I double-click on it, it's going to ask me for the password again. Okay, click Cancel, double-click on Mr. Humphreys, WC, hit Enter, make changes, 80, hit enter, and we can go ahead and save our work when we're done. And then of course, to have access to this, to either update the passwords or to remove them, then you need to unprotect the worksheet. So you can come up here, click on the Review tab, go to the Changes group, click Unprotect. Of course, we've got a password for that, boo. You don't have to select the cells. You can just come up here and click on Allow Users to Edit Ranges and select those ranges and delete them, or click on Modify, make changes to it. Let me click Cancel, delete them, and click OK. And now if I protect the worksheet, then these cells, let me right-click on one of them, go down to Format, click on the Protection tab, as we learned in the previous training video, that all the cells by default are locked, so when we protect the worksheet, this cell is going to be locked and it's not going to be editable. Where it could be, if we either unlock it, that means that anybody can have access to it and make changes to it, or we password protect it, and so again, only those who have the password are able to access it. If you're going to be passing your document here off to somebody else, you may want to consider using the Document Inspector feature, because it will go through the entire document and find personal or hidden information that you may want removed before you hand it off. Now, when I talk about personal information, it includes things like comments. So in the Document Inspector, if you have any comments throughout the entire workbook, it'll find it and allow you to remove all of them in a single click. The inspector is all or nothing, so you remove all comments or you don't remove any of them at all. Also, other personal information is backstage here, as we discussed in an earlier training video, the properties. Let me click on Show All, and it will remove most of them. I don't think it removes the hyperlink base, but we'll see that in just a second. Let me go back. Other things that it will remove are any hidden columns or rows. You can see that F is missing, so it goes E, G, and when I click and drag to select both columns, so I can, get the hidden one in between, and I right click to go to unhide, it appears. Let me go ahead and undo that. What it's going to do is when I use the Document Inspector to find this and it says it's here, it doesn't tell me where, it just says it's in the workbook. When I click on remove the hidden column, it actually removes it. So nothing changes here. It doesn't open up and give me back the F again. It just re-alphabetizes it, and the space between these two tables will still be the same. And let's come down here and right click on the worksheet and go to unhide. We've got a hidden worksheet. Again, the Document Inspector will find any hidden worksheets, and when I click remove, it'll delete it, get rid of it. So let's come up here and click on the File tab. Info selected by default. And before we check for issues, notice to the right-hand side, it's got the Inspect Workbook heading, and it says before publishing this file, or giving it to somebody else, or making it accessible to anybody else but you, notice that it wants you to be aware that it contains comments, because your comments may be personable. Document properties, hidden columns, hidden worksheets, invisible objects, content that people with disabilities find difficult to read. What you can do is click on Check for Issues to find those hidden properties and personal information. Got to save it first, so say yes. It opens up a window of all the things we can check for: comments, document properties, all the way down to invisible content. We can uncheck these and say, well, just search for or inspect for hidden worksheets, but let's do all. Click on Inspect, and what it finds, it gives us the option to remove all of it. All the comments, gone. All the document properties, well, most of them, gone, and I'll show you that in just a second. Any hidden rows and columns, they're gone. Any worksheets, they're deleted, they're gone. Close out. So when I right click on any worksheet, I don't get the unhide option because it removed it, deleted it from the workbook. When I go back to the first worksheet here, you can see that, well, F is now available, but it didn't unhide it, it actually removed it, because if it unhid that column, I would have, well, like it was before, this extra space. Let me undo that. Comments are gone as well. Let's click on the File tab to look at the properties, and it looks like it got rid of most, if not all, of the properties. Sometimes it doesn't do that. In other words, if I'm backstage and I clear it and I don't go to the front stage, it may hold on to the hyperlink base until I actually close out or go to the front stage. So don't panic if you see something still there. Just basically save your workbook, close out, open it back up, and double check to make sure everything's cleared out. To protect the structure of your workbook so nobody can delete, insert, or move around your worksheets, come up here and click on the Review tab, go to the Changes group, and click on Protect Workbook, and it's already checked. Now in 2013 they disabled the Windows option, so no longer can you check it to freeze the windows so nobody can resize it. In any case, since it's already checked Structure, you can go ahead and click OK, but without a password anybody else can go ahead and, well, unprotect your workbook and be able to delete, move around, and insert additional worksheets. So if you want to go ahead and type in a pass, I typed in pass, hit enter, and then confirm it by typing it in again, hit enter, and now it's protected. And you can see up here in the Changes group that it's highlighted. So if somebody comes down here and tries to right click on a worksheet to get the option to insert, delete, rename, move, copy, color, all the other structure options, they can't do it. So to go ahead and get those options back, well, come back up here, deselect Protect Workbook, be sure to type in your password, hit enter, and then you can go ahead and right click on the worksheet and be able to insert, delete, rename, and so on. To password protect your workbook from somebody opening it without the password, or even to modify it, or you can do a combination of both, you need to go ahead and do a Save As. And you can do it by coming up here and clicking on the File tab, going backstage to Save As, or let me hit back. If you don't have it added to your Quick Access toolbar, you can see in the pop-up you can hit the F12 key on the keyboard and it opens up the Save As window. Then come down here and click on the Tools drop-down arrow and go to General Options, and there you go. Password to open and to modify. First, let's do to open. Go ahead and type in a password. I typed in pass, P-A-S-S, hit enter. Then it'll ask you to type it in again to confirm it. Then hit enter again. And now that it's set to the workbook, you need to go ahead and save it so you can go ahead and overwrite it with the password and say yes. Now it replaces the old workbook with the new workbook that has the password tied to it. So when we close out of it, and it's in my exercises folder on my desktop, double click to open it up. And there's the workbook, double click. There you go. If you don't have a password to open it, then, well, you can click cancel and you just get the shell of the program. So if we go ahead and minimize that and double click on it again, and we do have the password, hit enter, now we have full access. Now if you need to make changes or modifications to the password, even removing it from the workbook, then go ahead and do a Save As again, hit the F12 key on the keyboard, or of course click on Save As, or go backstage to Save As, and then come down here and click on Tools, go to General Options, go ahead and remove it by deleting it, clicking OK. Be sure to go ahead and replace the workbook with the changes and say yes. Then you can close out, double click to open it up, no password needed. Let's go ahead and do it again, Save As, Tools, General Options, and let's do Modify. Let's do Pass, hit Enter, Pass, hit Enter. Go ahead and click Save to replace the workbook with the password, then say yes. Let's go ahead and close out, and then go ahead and double click to open it up, and there you go. If you have the password, you can make changes to it. If you don't, you can only select Read Only. So you can see up here in the title bar, we only have the Read Only part of the workbook, so if I try to make any changes to it, hey, what's going on here? Well, it allows you to make changes to it, but when you try to save it, it's going to force you to do a Save As. In other words, you can't overwrite the original because the original is read-only. So when you click OK, it opens up the Save As window and it says you either have to change the name so it doesn't overwrite the original document, or you can keep the same name but you have to save it in another place. So if I select that to keep the same name down below, I can't save it in the same folder as the original. I have to go outside of it like my desktop and click Save, and then it'll save it. So I can go ahead and close out of here. Minimize this down to the taskbar, and there it is on my desktop. Double click, and that's the copy that I saved or made changes to it, because the original, let me close out and restore my exercises folder. Remember, when I double click on it, if I do read only, I can't overwrite the original. But if I do have the password and I type in pass, hit enter, it opens it up, and you can see up here in the title bar it's not read only. I have full access. I can go ahead and make changes to it. Let's go ahead and click on Save As, Tools, to General Options, and let's add a password to both. So we have a password open and a modify. Click Okie dokie, and then type in the password again, hit enter, click Save, and say yes, you want to replace it, close out, and let's go ahead and open it up. Now it says, first of all, do you have a password to even open up the document? Well, we do. Then when we type it in and hit enter, it says, okay, now that you can view the document, do you have a password to make changes to it, or can you just view it? So if you don't have that second password, it can be the same password, but it wouldn't make sense. I made it the same password to keep it simple. In any case, pass, hit enter. Now we can go ahead and make changes to it as well. So you have a couple layers of security there if you'd like. A password to open, and then if they can open it, whether or not they can modify it. And then again, to go ahead and remove all that, click on Save As, Tools, General Options, and delete, click OK, click Save to accept the changes, yes, close out, open it back up again, and you no longer need a password. The Always Create Backup feature will initially create a backup copy of your original workbook, after which that copy will back up always on the second save of the original workbook. What does that mean? Well, let's take it step by step. First of all, let's go ahead and turn on the backup feature by coming up here and clicking on the Save As button on the Quick Access toolbar. Of course, if you don't have it there, you can click on the File tab to go backstage to Save As, or you can see in the pop-up, you can hit the F12 key on the keyboard, which is what I'm going to do here, to bring up the Save As window. Then come down and click on the Tools, go to General Options, and there it is, check Always Create Backup. Click OK, click Save to go ahead and replace it with the updates that we made to have that Always Create Backup feature on, and click Yes, and there you go. Go ahead and close out so you can see that you got your original workbook on the desktop. In addition, we now have a backup copy of the original. How do you know? Well, a couple things give it away. One is that when you look at the icon, this has 2 pages as opposed to the 1, and then the 2 pages has the green arrow pointing to the second page behind the one that's on top, meaning that it's receiving information from the original, the top page or file, to the one that's behind it. You could also look at the name here. This one says backup of, and then it's got the original file name. You can also look at the extensions. See this one, the default is .xlsx, and this one, for any backup file, is going to be .xlk. If you don't know anything about extensions, like how to view the extensions or what they mean, I recommend that you watch my Windows 7 training video on extensions. In any case, if I click off and double click to open up the backup, it says, do you trust its source? Of course I do. And there you go, just right now, a snapshot of the original, because we haven't made any changes to it. So if I go ahead and close out and go back to the original, there it is, double click, and make changes like instead of Doug we do Dougie's and hit enter and click save, it doesn't do it on the first save. If I do it on the second save, then the backup will automatically have all the changes that I made in here at the time of the second save. And I don't recommend that you do that because the whole idea of the original workbook is always to be one edit ahead of the backup. And let me go over this a little bit more in detail. So we've got Dougie's here. I click save once. Let me go ahead and close out. When I go to the backup, which is up here, they switch back and forth, which is funny. Let's go ahead and double click on the backup and say yes. Does it say Dougie's? No. So you can see that when I make all the changes in my original workbook, and I do Dougie's and I change the numbers here, and then I click save and I close out, and I'm like, oh fudge, I really made a huge mistake. Then I can go to the backup where it was before I made all the changes. So you could say that the backup is one step behind the original. So if I close out of here and I go to my original, double click, and I go from Dougie's to Doug's, what's going to happen when I click save to the backup? Is it going to have Dougie's or Doug's? Remember, it's always one step behind if I click the save button once. So the most recent update is Doug's. Before I changed it was Dougie's. So now my backup is going to have Dougie's in case if I made a huge mistake, that I can always go back to the backup here and open it up and say, yes, I trust the source, and there's Dougie's. So let me close out of here and prove my point in that when you click save more than once after you make changes, your backup is going to be like your original here. So let me double click to open up the original and double click and get rid of the S in Doug. Now when I click save, it's going to have the S in Doug in the backup, so it'll be Doug's. But if I click save again, that second save is now backing up everything that I have here, so it's now a copy of the original. Let me show you. Close out, go to the backup, open it up, say yes. It doesn't have Doug's, does it? So it's not one edit behind, it's now right up with the original. And so what's the purpose of the backup if I don't have a backup that keeps a snapshot of everything I had before I made changes and click save? So long story short, don't hit the save button more than once in your session, because if you do, you're just updating the backup with everything that you made here, all the changes. And then, let me go ahead and close out. Let's go back to the original, double click. You want to turn it off, do the same thing, click on Save As, Tools, General Options, uncheck, click OK, Save to overwrite, with that feature being turned off now, and say yes. So any changes I make here, like Heffernan D, and click save, 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 save. More than one save, which if the backup was still connected to it, it would automatically have the most recent changes here with just D. Heffernan. So when I close out, go to the backup, it's disconnected. Let me say yes. It doesn't have D. Heffernan because remember we unchecked it and it's no longer linked, as it were, to the original file. The shared workbook feature is used to share your workbook with others on your network, allowing them to make changes to it at the same time. And it'll highlight those changes with different colors for different users, but only after they save their changes on their end, and then you save it on your end, will you be able to then pull in those updated changes. So to be able to go ahead and share your workbook with others at the same time, come up here and click on the Review tab, go to the Changes group, and there you go, click on Share Workbook. Then come down here and check Allow Changes by more than one user at the same time. You've got some advanced options you can go over, like as far as the history of changes that you want to keep track of, up to 30 days, or you can do more or less. How you want to update the changes, like when you save the file, it'll pull in the changes, or you can have it automatically done every so many minutes. Now if there's a conflict between the users, like I go ahead and make a change to this cell at the same time somebody else makes a change, like if somebody else makes a change to the cell here and click Save, that change is sitting out there until I click Save. But if I make a change here before I click Save, where I'm pushing my change, and theirs is trying to come in, at the same time I click the Save button, there's going to be a conflict. So the two options I get is that I can have it ask me which change is going to win, which it'll always be mine, of course, or you can have the changes being saved that wins, whoever makes the last save. I'm going to leave as is and click OK. It now wants to save my workbook with this now being shared. But before I click OK, notice up here in the title bar, the share workbook.xlsx-excel, when I click Okie dokie, now shared is being added to it. So if you look up in the title bar in any workbook and it says shared, it's being shared. I'm now going to go ahead and go to another computer on the network and make some changes to the shared workbook, save it, and then come back here and click Save to be able to pull in those updated changes. Okay, I went ahead and made changes to the workbook here on another computer, so if I come up here and click Save, voila, let me click OK. The changes are now updated in my workbook, and you can see that they're highlighted or they got a colored border around it. Just hover over it to be able to see who made the change, which is me, on another computer, of course, with the date and time stamp, and what the cell was. In B4, it went from 150 to 0. Go ahead and hover over the rest, but you get the idea there. Now, if I don't like it, at least the change in this cell, and I want to go back to 150, at least I got the pop-up notes, so I can type in, let me select the cell, 150, and hit enter, but the highlights from all the other cells disappear. Drat. Well, remember, this keeps track of changes, and if I want to go ahead and see what those other cells were, because I can't hover over them now, then come up here on the Review tab to the Changes group, click on Track Changes, and go down to Accept Reject Changes. It's going to save the workbook again, that's fine. And then it says, do you want to review those changes that haven't been reviewed yet? And what that means is that not the review that I made by going through it, but the review that we're about to make by going into the Accept or Reject window when I click OK. So it opens up the Accept or Reject Changes window. You can see that the original value is 150. Then Kurt Kershaw on another computer changed it to 0, and then I changed it back to 150, so which one do I want? And you can see that the time here, it's the difference of a minute. I'm going to go back to Kurt Kershaw on the other computer and say accept it. Then it goes to the next cell and it says, okay, this is what it was and this is what it is. You can reject it. In fact, if you want to save yourself some time and you don't need to review the rest, you can say accept or reject all. Let's say accept all, and that's it. Once you're done making those exceptions or rejections here, you can't go back and do it again. Even if you uncheck when you want to review it, you just want to, well, even review for everyone and click Okie dokie. It says there's no more changes to accept or reject. We did it once, it's done. Now let me go back to the other computer and make an update to the cell B4, and then I'm going to come over here and type in a change to the same cell to see what happens. That, well, let me save it over here first. Okay, it's been saved. And then when I come over here and click Save, how it handles it, trying to accept the change from the other computer at the same time I'm trying to push in this change. When I click Save, there you go. Your changes on this sheet went from 0 to 2, but on Kurt Kershaw from another computer, they went from 0 to 1. Which one do you want? Do you want to accept yours or the other? We can accept the other. and be done with it. Click okie dokie, and that's it. Of course, you can hover over it, still get the highlight, but the moment that you make a change in another cell, it automatically removes the highlight, and in which case, let me delete that. You can go back to accept, reject, click okie dokie, click OK, and then the moment that you accept, reject that change, it wipes the memory clean of going back to doing it again. So it's a one-time thing. Now you need to know that shared workbooks don't support certain Excel features like deleting worksheets. Like if I come down here and I right-click on this worksheet, hey, I can't delete it. So that's one feature that you can't use. Also merging and splitting cells. And you'll find more as you go through it, but those are the top ones that I've noticed. And then finally, anybody can go ahead and unshare the workbook by coming up here and clicking on Share Workbook, going to the Editing tab and unchecking it. In fact, you can select somebody and click Remove User. It's not very secure if you want to be able to not get kicked off of being able to have access to your workbook here. So if you want to be able to protect this from anybody else removing the share option, you can watch my Protect and Share training video. But for right now, let me show you what happens when I go to the other computer and I open up the Share Workbook and I uncheck Allow Changes by more than one user at the same time and click OK. The warning comes up that this action is going to remove the workbook from shared use. The change history is going to be erased, and other users who are editing this workbook are not going to be able to save their changes even if you share this workbook again. Are you sure you want to remove this workbook from shared use? I'm going to say yes. So when I'm sitting here oblivious to everything and I'm like, I'm going to make some changes, and I come up here to click Save. This file has been locked by Kurt Kershaw. In other words, I removed it from being shared, and because I have access to it, only one person can access it at the same time because it's not being shared. So the moment I close out of it and I click OK and I click Save again, the file is no longer being shared. Click OK. And now it wants me to go ahead and save it as another file. Let me try to overwrite the original up on top. It doesn't allow me to do that. Excel was unable to save it because there was a problem in reading or applying the part of the revision history. So if I want it, I'll have to click Save As, go to the desktop and do it. Well, let's try to do it as workbook, shared workbook number 2, although it's not being shared anymore. Click Save. It allows me to do it. Of course, you can see up here that my workbook is being shared. Let me close out. And on the desktop, the original share workbook, double-click to open it up, is not being shared because, again, I was on the other computer and I unshared it. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.